From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
This morning we have another in our series of The Digital Future and You, that's coordinated by Judith Cannon and Angela Kenny, who are chiefs in ADA area. They have been doing this series of programs for us now for maybe 5 to 10 years. And we try to bring in speakers and presenters that help keep our staff apprised of what's going on in the world related to automation techniques and other ventures that will help us in carrying out our work. We have been working with Deborah Fritz, who is our speaker today, along with her husband, Richard Fritz, for the past 12 months or so, since the U.S. RDA Test Coordinating Committee started looking at RDA, adopting RDA, and looking at what needs to be in place for RDA to be adopted by the library community. And one of those areas had to do with looking at prototypes and how RDA mapped to the current MARC environment, and that would help ease the process for catalogers and others who'd be using RDA to have a look to see how this worked in this new environment. And part of what we've been doing is working with a prototype that she has developed, and they'll be part of what she presents today. And I'll talk a bit more about that when I talk about her credentials and background. I also want to say that we have run out of handouts. We did not expect such an overflow crowd, but I think that is, there are some seats over here for those of you who are standing in the doorway. But we will, Susan Morris will make additional copies. Susan, if you'll raise your hand for those who don't know you. And those who want copies of the handout can just send Susan an email and drop by and pick up extra copies. So we're asking you to share what you have today during this program. Deborah Fritz was trained in the art of cataloging, and I like that phrase as a former cataloger. I should say former cataloger. I still am a cataloger at heart, even though I haven't done it in a decade or two. At the University of Toronto's Faculty of Library and Information Science, as it was called at the time. Since then, she's been engaged in she's cataloging libraries. She's managed retrospective conversion projects. One of those that she mentions is Atlas. And for anyone who remembers Atlas, that dates us with a particular place in time. But she had some association with that. She's also tried her own contract cataloging business. She's worked for regional consortium in Florida, first as a training coordinator and then as an executive director. In 1992, she started her own cataloging, training and consulting software company, the MARC of Quality. We might note that if we evolve from the MARC format to something else, she may need to change that to something like TMQ.
Right.
But that's a topic for a future Digital Future and Youth program that we have planned for April 2nd, where we will update you on our progress on the Bibliographic Framework Initiative, which may lead to the replacement or supplanting of MARC. She's the author of Cataloging with ACR2 and MARC 21 in the second edition now, and MARC 21 for Everyone, both published by ELA Editions. And she's been teaching cataloging workshops locally, that means in Florida, around the U.S., and indeed international since 1988. Now, instead of writing Cataloging with RDA and MARC 21 to replace Cataloging with ACR2 and MARC 21, she and Richard decided to take a different tack. And so they decided to focus on figuring out how software could be designed to assist catalogers who work with RDA. The RIMMF, that is RDA Metadata in Many Formats software that she is about to present to us will show you the first step in that direction. Now she wants us to be forewarned that this is, there's much, and we emphasize much more that can be done with cataloging software to simplify the cataloging process once RDA really takes hold. So with that, we welcome Deborah, and I turn the floor over to you. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Beecher. Well, welcome to this brief demo, hopefully brief. I want to say how much I appreciate the chance to be here and to talk to you. And I also really want to encourage you to ask questions at any time if you have any. Interrupt me and ask questions, suggestions, anything that you've got. As Beecher said, we're calling this thing I'm about to show you RIMMF because it stands for RDA in Many Metadata Formats. And we think that's how RDA is meant to work, that you're going to be able to enter RDA data in some sort of a form, and there'll be lots of forms out there once things get going. Hopefully with lots of help for you, lots more help than the current cataloging software offers. And then the data should be able to be exported in whatever format you choose to use, whether it is XML or RDF or MARC. Many metadata formats is coming. Before I get into details, I want to remind you that we do intend to make RIMMF freely available for unlimited use in any way except commercial use. And we've got a Creative Commons license up on our wiki where we are going to be putting the software available for download, and it is very, very close to being available for general release. We've sent it to a few selected people to iron out the glitches before we let it out to the public. On the first page of the handout you're given, you'll find the link to our RIMMF wiki. And if you go there, you will find that you can only see the first page until you click login and register. And you can register with a fake name. It doesn't matter. We just want to know how many people are getting in and doing things. So once you click on the registration, then you get to the user guide and lots of other things that we are working on improving as we get there. And you can download and start playing with RIMMF. All right, so one of the things we were promised about RDA way back in the beginning was that it would be simpler to do a bunch of things that we currently do. And I do believe that one of the things RDA will make simpler is the ability to create better cataloging software and better discovery software, but you know, for us cataloging is more important than discovery if you're a real cataloger. I shouldn't say that, should I? No, that's not true at all. Discovery is the end result, so discovery is the most important thing. But I still care most about the cataloging software. All a good programmer should need is the underlying stuff. And that's what we still need to get, the official element list and the schema application profile or whatever you're going to call it. Once we get that going, you'll get lots of people ready to write software. Now, one of the things I do for a living is teach cataloging workshops, and they're always very practical on how to do it. So last year I started working on my own RDA workshop, and I'm calling that rudimentary RDA. But I found that even though I have been trying to learn RDA for years, and I've been asking questions of dozens of people, begging and pestering them, I still couldn't wrap my brain around how I was going to explain RDA thinking to the type of level of people that I work with who are very practical people. They haven't already dedicated huge chunks of time to learning RDA. How do I get them to understand what this is about? So I decided, being very visual, that I needed an input form. So I went looking for an input form so I could see RDA in action. I couldn't find anyone even talking about making an input form. Everyone just said, oh, that'll be easy, we'll get to it sometime. So we decided, hey, if it's that easy, we'll do it. So my husband, Richard, who is my business partner in TMQ, is our programmer. We have a couple of other cataloging software programs. And he said he would work on it for me. And we've got it to the point where within a month he had something that was good enough to change my entire point of view about RDA. I went from being, I don't know what I'm doing, to this might work. So, what is RIMMF? Well, we designed RIMMF primarily as a visualization tool. This is not cataloging software for you to use to actually make records. It is got potential as a cataloging training tool, but its real purpose is to help you to see RDA thinking in action. We did find that as we went along, in order to get you to not be frightened by it, we had to keep putting more things into it. And so it actually does do things, to our great surprise. You can make a record. You can clone a record, which is what I call creating a different edition or an air match. You can copy a record and you can link between records. It does things because that's the only way you can really get an idea of how much difference there is in RDA thinking and AACR thinking. It's in the doing that the difference really shows. So we think we've got RIMMF to the point where it's useful for showing RDA thinking. We also think it might be useful for visualizing MARC mapping, any additional elements that we might need in MARC, any additional elements we might need in RDA, what's missing between the two, and for developing the element set list and the schema possibly. So we're hoping that it can be useful in those areas as well. Now, before I show you RIMMF in action, I do just want to explain the rationale behind our design of RIMMF so that you understand where we're coming from with it. As all of you undoubtedly already know, if you have 3 very similar resources to catalog, and here are 3 children's books containing Bemmelman's story, Madeline, AACR MARC has us make 3 records for those resources, which will have much the same content in all 3 records. There's a lot of repetition in the bibliographic records. It is my understanding that RDA will have us describe and link 1 work, linked in this case to 1 author, 1 expression, and 3 manifestation records. Now, I always have to say this, forgive me calling them records, I still don't know what else to call them, so for the time being I will call them records. We only have to enter a link to the creator once to the work entity record, and we can put in here the summary and the illustrations and the awards will be entered only once in the expression record, and then the things that are specific to each manifestation will be entered in the smaller manifestation records. If another publisher releases another English text version of Bemmelman's Madeline, I always pick the examples that are hard to say. I don't know why I do that. Then all we have to do is create another manifestation entity record for it and link that entity record to the same expression which is linked to the work and the author. And when a new expression comes along, for example, Spanish version of Madeline, we will use the same work record, create a new expression entity record for the new expression, link that expression to the work, of course. It has a translator, so we'll link the translator to the expression, and then link it to the new manifestation. From here, it is up to the OPAC designers, all of them out there, to figure out how to link each of those sets of data elements and display them nicely. And they could display them in something like this hierarchical display. Here's our author with his works listed, and under Madeline we have the brief record for a work record for Madeline. That's all we know about her at this point. Then down to the expressions, 2 of them, and the manifestations under each one of them. It could look like that, but it could look completely different. Now notice, if you can see, it's very small on your screen, but the displays contain punctuation. That punctuation is not entered when you enter your data in the RDA input form, as you will see. It will be up to the OPAC designers to insert the punctuation when they display that information in their OPACs. All right, so with this Ferber approach to entities and their relationships to each other in mind, we started working on the input form that I hoped would help me to wrap my brain around RDA thinking. So we went looking for the list of all the data elements that could be provided for each entity and for instructions on how to relate those entities together. We were hoping that that was already out there and we could just use it. We couldn't find anything that was machine actionable. Many presentations, many explanations, but nothing that as a programmer you could simply say, here, do it. So we had to pull that together for ourselves. Now, we provide some of this explanation about our design in the handout you were given, and the opening page of the RIMMF wiki also provides this information under RIMMF structure. So down here where it says RIMMF structure, if you make it to the wiki page, you will find all of what's in the handout. Since the term cataloging seems to be going out of style in this new world, I'm suggesting RIMMFing might be a suitable replacement. And so you will also find a brief tutorial on RIMMFing a resource on that wiki. It may not take off, but hey. If you log in, as I said, and go to the user guide, you can also see examples of all of the default templates I'm about to show you. I didn't bother to put them in the handout because they're on the wiki. So you'll be able to see blank templates for each entity on the wiki under this section. All right, now remember that one of our main goals for RIMMF is for it to be a visualization tool for thinking RDA instead of thinking MARC. So we designed it to show RDA thinking, even though some of that thinking should really be hidden for more efficient data entry. When it comes to actually using it, much of what I'm going to show you will be hidden. I'm showing you the skeleton, the framework, all of the structural stuff, so that you understand the thinking. So here's the top level for opening RIMMF, file, new record 4, and then a list of the possible entity records that you're going to fill out. And I'm going to start with just some screenshots and then I'll show it to you live. So here is where we got this idea of an approach from. In the RDA toolkit, under the Tools tab is the element set view, and there they list all of the entities. So we have all of the entities in RIMMF. If you open those tabs up under the element set view, RDA has us provide data elements for attributes and for relationships for each entity. So RIMMF does the same with that, attributes and relationships. And we added our own captions to separate the elements out logically that way. We then moved from the element set view to the RDA guidelines themselves in the table of contents and saw that they broke the attributes and the relationships of each entity into different categories. You have attributes for identifying the manifestation versus attributes for describing the carrier for the manifestation. So two different types of attributes. So we did that in RIMMF, identifying and describing. So let's say that you were going to begin by describing the manifestation aspects of the resource that you have. You would open the manifestation form and see under attributes for identifying the manifestation the different elements that RDA says will help to identify this particular manifestation of the resource that you're trying to describe. Some of these elements are then broken down into more specific sub-elements. You don't just enter title, you enter these specific types of title information. Now, not all of these elements and sub-elements are going to be needed for every type of resource. Wizards would be able to customize the templates, and you would say in early questions, you know, exactly what are you describing, and it'll bring up templates that are customized for just that type of material. Whatever the software is, it'll do that. We have no wizards at this point. It's still just very basic. Now, I'm not going to look at all of the identifying elements at this point. I'll show you them in more detail when we go in action. So right now, let's just go on and briefly glance at the attributes for describing carriers for the manifestation. Separate sections, so a separate caption in RIMMF. After you describe the carrier, then we're asked to consider adding information about attributes for providing acquisition and access information for the manifestation. So another section, availability, contact information, etc. Once you've done all the relevant data about attributes for the manifestation, we're to think about the thing that is really interesting in RDA, and that is relationships. That's where it really starts getting fun. So here you see a list of the possible relationships that could apply to a manifestation and could prove important or just interesting for catalog users. So for us to figure out the relationship stuff, we had to pull it from 3 different sections of the toolkit, the guidelines. We found nothing that simply said, this is what you do with relationships. So we went into each of these sections and pulled out what appeared to be the relationships for each type of entity and grouped them under this section of relationships. All right, moving on to items. I'm not going to talk about it in detail. You can add a lot more item-specific information in RDA than I ever thought of doing in AACR. And there's the list of the high-level list. Should help anyone trying to catalog special collections. Once you've got your manifestation and your item, then you can think about the work. That would be my next step. I'd jump up to think about work. And there, we would start with the attributes of the work that identified this particular work, and whatever you can put down that uniquely identifies this work. Now, there are a few elements in the toolkit list that we didn't include. We're still trying to figure out how to deal with a few of those elements, but everything that looked reasonable to bring over, we brought over and put in. We also wanted to point out the rule for constructing access points to represent works and expressions, which turn out to be authorized access points and variant access points. These are not on the element set view, and so we added them as TMQ elements, which you can identify anywhere. We've done that with the dagger. Anything without a dagger is an official RDA element. Anything we had to add to make it work, we put in with a dagger indicating this is local. All right, once you've identified the work, you've added all the elements to identify the work, catalogers then would move on to describing content of the work. And then consider the relationships that apply at the work level. Creators of various types, other persons, families, or corporate bodies, related works. Some subject relationships will apply here when that gets into RDA, the instructions for COEP, concept, object, event, and place, haven't been completed yet. So we have placeholders for them in RIMMF as well, but nothing ready yet. Once you've done your work, you can then go down and do your expression of the work. And again, it starts with the identifying elements to identify this particular expression, and attributes for describing content at the expression level. Notice that illustrative content applies to every manifestation of this expression, so it is at the expression level. Then we have relationships that apply at the expression level, which they basically call contributors of various types, editors, translators, illustrators, and then related expressions like translations of a particular expression of something. So again, I'll show you in a bit, you don't have to know where everything fits. It prompts you to fill in what fits where. Okay, so it's going to be a lot easier. There are also some subject relationships at the expression level, but again, that's not ready yet. So that's our rationale for adding the captions that you're going to see in the templates that I'm going to be showing you in this demo. Grouping things logically just to help you to think straight. If the groupings don't appeal, we also send RIMMF out with a default element list that is simply sorted in element name order, which I find very difficult to think through, but if you like it that way, it's there. And you can also sort that template in RDA rule number order at a click of a button. And that is a lot more logical because they did design the RDA rules in a logical order. It's just not the normal order we're used to, but it is very logical. So let's see this in action. Bearing in mind again that this is a visualization tool, so it's a little raw and it doesn't do everything that you might want. So say you're a copy cataloger. Those are the people I mostly teach, so I always start with copy cataloging. You have this in your handout, Sense and Sensibility. You would start where you always start, with a search, and the most common starting place for searching would be an ISBN. If you do that and you found a hit, you'd bring up a manifestation record. Let's say we don't have a hit. So you try again, this time with an author and a title. If you do that, you're going to bring up a work level, because that's the kind of information found in your work record most of the time. So we bring up our work, and it also brings up all the expressions of the work. That's my thinking. I mean, other people might design something different, but if I was designing it, that's what I would do. Now, this is obviously a very small database because there's only 4 expressions of sense and sensibility. It's in a tree format, like I showed you for Madeline. And this is from the cataloger's point of view, so it's going to look similar to how I imagine an OPAC could look. What we want to see is whether one of these expressions will match what we have. So hopefully the persons who made the records put enough information in the expression record that I can identify from a list which expression I want to further investigate. So add more to your expressions, that's my advice. Chinese isn't going to help us, but any of these 3 could be matches for what I've got. Let's say that the cataloging software has the plus signs, and if I expand, I can see more. There isn't anything much more about this particular expression. It's a little bleak, but this one has supplementary content, which is an introduction by Ross Ballister. So I'm very much recommending that you add the supplementary content, because that tells me whether that's going to work for me. This one has different supplementary content. Under RDA, the presence of different supplementary content means a different expression, because it changes your experience of the work. All right, so the thinking is there. We've got different expressions. Now, looking at what you've got there, we have additional content. What is it? Making you think. Well, it's in your handout. That's why I gave it to you. We've got a different editor and an introduction by Tony Tanner, right? So we've got supplementary content and introduction by Tony Tanner. So this one isn't going to match the Ross Ballister. This one's not going to match the David Gates. This one could, if that cataloger didn't bother to mention the supplementary content. So we're going to need to look at that, which is why I'm saying please add supplementary content at the expression level. It'll help with copy cataloging. Now I have to do some techie steps for just 1 second to switch over to the live. All right. Now, I'm going to get you to do something. Let's see how good an audience you are. You have this in the handout, so you don't have to squint. Do you see the printouts of the WEMI records? Mm-hmm. I stripped these down. So what we ended up with for this particular example was 1 item record, 1 manifestation, 1 expression, and 1 work, right? There are others, but that's describing our resource. I stripped them down to only the kinds of things we might show in an OPAC view, so a lot of underneath hidden things have disappeared. Just for the fun of it, I'm going to get you, if you have the handout, to write the type of entity that each record is describing in this entity box here. So looking at that information, try and figure out what is this describing. And these are WEMIs. So just write, you know, is it a work, is it an expression, is it a manifestation, or is it an item in that top box. If you don't have a handout, then squint really hard and see if you can figure it out from the screen. Okay, I know that the ones who've done it are really quick. Oh, and flip over on the other side of the handout. There's 2 more. What kind of entities are they? So write those down. All right, now let's see how you did. No, I'm going too fast. It's because you don't all have copies of the handout. So let's go on because you don't. Don't want to bore the rest of them. So here's how it worked. The first one was an item, which you could tell from the identifier for the item element. Second one was a manifestation. The third was an expression. And the fourth was a work. Got it all? Okay. All 3 of these are person entities. Now, if you can, draw the links. Write the links. That's what I wanted you to do. Write the number, the RIMMF identifier, for the records that you would link to the item. And then do the same for each of these. But let me just show it to you because we are running out of time. The RIMMF identifier for the item would go in the manifestation relationship link, and the RIMMF identifier for the manifestation would go under relationships in the item record. So it's back and forth, up and down, item and manifestation. The manifestation is going to link to the expression, and the expression link to the manifestation through the RIMMF identifier. The numbers are what we use to do the linking. In this case, they're numbers. The identifier is what we use to do the linking. The expression is a little more challenging because it links up to the manifestation and down to the work. So it's got up and down, up and down. And then the persons link to their appropriate records. Ron, who we didn't see a record for, to the item, Jane to the work, and Tony to the expression. Okay, and we did all of that in the example we saw. And here's another way of displaying it that might be a little easier to see. Jane linked to work, Tony linked to expression, and Ron linked to item. Okay, that's RDA and RIMMF. You describe the attributes or characteristics of the 4 levels associated with the resource, WEMI. You link the 4 levels together so that they can be pulled together for a display. And then you also link the appropriate levels to any people, family, or corporate bodies associated with those levels. All right, any questions? Yes?
I realize they're all ACR2 people at this point in time in terms of how we look at things, but wouldn't it make more sense to, assuming you've determined the work is not something you already have, there's no ISBN match. The first ask, is this a new work? If it isn't a new work, if I have an existing work, is this a new expression? And then if there's not an existing, or if there is an existing expression, is this a new manifestation? And I would suggest it might be simpler if something is in the example common to all work, any work. For example, the summary. Matter is the same story no matter what language. Shouldn't that be part of the work part of the record? And then like here where you're using the editor to define which, to distinguish one expression from another, instead of having the editor all in the manifestation, it should be in the expression. then when you're cataloging it, you would work, yes, this is common to all works, transfer the data, present the data, however we do it. Next, the expression. Well, Tony Tanner is common to all of that expression. Why repeat it in manifestation? Because by definition, every manifestation of that work has to be edited by him, just as every expression of Madeline has to have the same summary.
We didn't put Tony with the manifestation. We put Tony with the expression as a relationship. We did add a statement of responsibility for Tony to the manifestation, so that when you were trying to, again, do copy cataloging, you would be able to recognize, does this manifestation match the item I have in my hand?
But every expression has that same statement of responsibility. or
No, it might have a different statement. It might have slightly different wording, even though it is the same expression. They might have added the and. So it's transcription always goes at manifestation. But you're asking RDA questions. And really, I'm just trying to show you what RIMMF does with what RDA tells us to do. And RDA makes that pretty clear, and it's just that RIMMF helps you to know what to do instead of, it makes it a logical flow through to see, now where do I put that information because it's on this form. Now if I've got it on the wrong form, I'll be happy to move it, but so far it seems like it is in the right place. Any other questions? Yes?
So from a workflow standpoint, it makes more sense to you to start with the manifestation?
As a copy cataloger, especially with the barcodes now being scannable on the back of the book, that's where most people start. They scan the barcode and bring up a manifestation.
But I'm not copy cataloging, so where...
If you were creating an original, I'm going to show you that in a minute. But I still start with a manifestation. But that is entirely my personal preference. You can start at any level in RIMMF that you want to. It's just what's logical. Remember that you can log into our wiki, the RIMMF wiki, and read the user guide. You can see how all of it works. I have put up a little tutorial, the one called RIMMFing a resource. So any other questions? We do still have 5 minutes. Yes?
Have you tried music?
I have not. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking...
I'm not trying to be facetious, but you will find that the expression entity is infinitely more complicated once you get to performed works and once you get to repertory, which exists in thousands of manifestations.
Yes.
Western art music repertory, excuse me.
Sure, and I believe that the number of links will just get extremely long, and then the relationship tree will get extremely long. But I'm looking forward to trying. I mean, that's...
Go to it.
No, I don't know enough about music, so I'm going to need some help with that one. Maybe I was standing too far back. Yes?
That's also something terrific to try. How about a textbook that has connected to it a teacher's manual, an officially published study guide, unofficially published study guide, website?
That one's going to be easy. That one's going to be so easy.
And,
Because of the relation, it was so hard in AACR, but it is going to be so easy
And
because of the different, you just make a little record for each of them and relate them.
statutes where the expression, the manifestation that counts for librarians is the official one, which is usually at the government's website now. It used to be published. But then it's going to be showing up in all sorts of weird places.
Again, I guess those would be separate manifestations that you might link with a related manifestation or not. It might just list under the expression as another manifestation. Again, that one's not going to be so hard. Serial's going to be, interestingly enough, the serial added entry might make a comeback at LC because we've got serial relationships, right? And if you're going to get into relationships, that's another relationship. I'm really looking forward to, there are some more challenging collections where they are not as clean as that 3 novels together. which are going to be a little more challenging mentally to figure out. RIMMF is not going to have a problem with any of these. It's just a case of working out how it's done. And then we'll be able to see what it looks like, and that might make some changes to what they say to do because it doesn't look right. That's the whole purpose of this, to start making things that you can see what it's going to look like and then see where the problems are. Maybe it is going to be such a major issue for music that they may have to rethink a few things to make it work better.
They have to? Or
They, the JSC, the RDA people, yeah.
Yeah.
The music community, everyone who's involved with trying to make the thing work. Yes?
I think the same might hold for serials that have changed their titles, where the manifestations have changed titles at different intervals, how to make all those appropriate relationships at the expression and work level.
Yes.
So when you get to that point, I'd love to hear how it goes.
Or work with me to
Yeah.
help me
Yes.
to do that, because I will get very stuck on serials
Okay.
very quickly. But yes, it
Got a deal.
could be very interesting to do the changing back and forth. Maybe we don't need to do that anymore because of the links. I don't know. Yes?
May I just say what I see as a cataloger who has been working with as a tester?
Yes.
I'm seeing your template as helping greatly with the building the relationships, which is wonderful. But we also do, I'm sure you're familiar with our macros. I'm not sure if you are, but
No.
we do have macros that do some of the things that seem to be a bit cumbersome on each individual level. For example, the carrier, etc. We have a macro that kind of fills those blanks in now. So some of this is going to be a lot less cumbersome from our end.
Yes.
And when you do have the wizard and all of these extra fields that are not needed for the particular thing you're working with, that would also make it simpler. So if
Yes.
you don't look as complicated, then we could basically focus our attention on the relationships rather than building the records themselves.
That's right. And the wizards will do the macros that you're talking about. Whether it's in RIMMF, which is, remember, not a cataloging tool, but a visualization tool, but whoever does the real stuff will be doing these macros, because it will be easy to do them because they will be lined out in the schema application profile. And it is 11 o'clock, and I'm very sorry, but I have to stop now. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.